Welcome to the righteous sphere. We separate the gray areas over here. We don't do the lying like those other places. No. We don't do no fucking lying over here. You're gonna get the truth.
This is shocking.
To exterminate the Negro population, Margaret Sanger, founder of Planned Parenthood, Hillary Clinton did say, I admire Margaret Sanger enormously. No politician would get my vote nor my support if they would have said, I admire Margaret Sanger. The woman who said, our goal is the extermination of the Negro race. What kind of Negro would vote for a woman who would say such a thing? Got to be a dumb Negro to do that. Something wrong with you, Negro.
Or those of you who are concerned about democracy but are more concerned about making ends meet. Or those of you who understand the difference between the two candidates but don't think this election will actually make a difference in your life. Now, when I talk to folks that are genuinely undecided, the first thing they'll say is that they want a president who will improve the economy. And that makes sense. Even though wages are steadily growing, unemployment is relatively low, inflation is finally slowing, but the price of everything from healthcare to housing to groceries is still too high. The question I ask them, the question I think we all have to ask ourselves is, who's really going to do something about it? Now, in talking to people, I've realized, so I want to address this. It turns out one of the reasons people think Donald Trump will improve the economy is because they watched The Apprentice. I'm serious. No. I'm not kidding. I've heard this, people say this. I happened to miss that show when it was running, but it was really popular. So I want everybody to be clear. That was not reality. That was a reality show. The truth is, Donald Trump was given $400 million by his daddy. That's how he got rich. And somehow his company still managed to declare bankruptcy 6 times. So let's put that aside for a second. When it comes to actual policy, Donald Trump has offered up 2 ideas. The first is, once again, he wants to give another massive tax cut to billionaires and big corporations. Now, some people might hear that and they say to themselves, well, I remember the economy being pretty good when he first came into office. It was, because it was my economy. I had spent 8 years cleaning up the mess the Republicans left me. Y'all remember, auto plants all across the Midwest, including here in Wisconsin, flat on their backs, on the verge of bankruptcy. And we worked and we worked. And after 8 years, I then handed off over 75 straight months of job growth and low inflation to Donald Trump. And the only thing his tax cuts did back then was to help folks that were already doing good and drive up the deficit in the meantime. Trump's other big idea is to slap a tariff on everything from food to TVs. Now, almost every economist who has looked at this idea says that won't lower prices, that makes prices higher. And when he's challenged on this point, Trump will brag about, well, look at gas prices. They were $2 a gallon when I was in office. You know why gas was so cheap? Because there was a global lockdown during COVID and nobody was driving. And he's talking about it like it was the good old days. I want us to remember that. Yes, gas was super cheap because we were stuck inside the house. Nobody was buying gas. So then I'll hear people say, well, at least Donald Trump sent me a check during the pandemic. Now, y'all have heard this. I guarantee you some of you have heard this from somebody. So I want to clear this up as well. At the start of COVID, Democrats and Republicans joined together to send out emergency checks. Tammy was there. And you know what? Joe Biden worked with Congress and sent out an emergency check during the pandemic. Just like I worked with Congress to give people emergency relief during the Great Recession. There was not anything unique about what Donald Trump did.
I'm going to take just 1 minute to explain why your contribution right now is so important. This may not be the news you want to hear, but it is the truth.
A marketing tool. I'd never thought of that. For me, for Joe Biden, it was not about taking credit and advancing our politics and feeding our egos. It was about helping people during tough times. So, the point is, for those of you who are still making up your minds out there, do not give Donald Trump the benefit of the doubt because he was on a reality show. And certainly do not give him credit for an economy that he inherited. There is only one candidate who has offered serious ideas about how to drive down prices and make this economy work for everybody, and that is Kamala Harris.
This is shocking.
To exterminate the Negro population, Margaret Sanger, founder of Planned Parenthood, Hillary Clinton did say, I admire Margaret Sanger enormously. No politician would get my vote nor my support if they would have said, I admire Margaret Sanger, the woman who said, our goal is the extermination of the Negro race. What kind of Negro would vote for a woman who would say such a thing? Got to be a dumb Negro to do that. Something wrong with you, Negro.
Healthcare. If you ask Donald Trump what he's going to do to make healthcare more affordable, he's got one answer, and that is repeal the Affordable Care Act. And he's not by himself. The other day, the Speaker of the House, the Republican Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, said there would be, quote, no Obamacare if Trump wins. Now, do not boo. No. Now, neither of them can really explain why they want to end it, except for the fact that I did it. The problem they have is, guess what? The Affordable Care Act works. Almost 50 million people have gotten health care because of it. Another 50 million have the security of knowing insurance companies can't deny them coverage because of a pre-existing condition. The more people benefit, the more popular it has become. Which is why a couple weeks ago, some of y'all saw this, Trump's running mate, Mr. Vance, do not boo, vote. Mr. Vance had the nerve to say Donald Trump, quote, salvaged the Affordable Care Act. What? What? Donald Trump spent his entire presidency trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act, trying to tear it down, and he couldn't even do that right. And now, 8 years after he was elected, he was asked, well, if you did repeal it, what would you replace it with? And he looked, and he kind of fumbled around, and they said, well, I've got concepts of a plan for how to replace it. Now, I want you to think about this for a second. Let's say your boss gives you an assignment, says, I need it by Friday. Friday rolls around. Your boss comes up to you, says, did you finish that project for me? You say, well, actually, I haven't started, but I do have a concept of a plan. or you could try it at home. Honey, did you do the dishes? You throw out the trash? I've been watching this football game, but I do have a concept of a plan to do the dishes. How's that going over? You're on the couch. If it would not work for you, why should it work for the President of the United States? It shouldn't.
The call. You guys know what the call is. We all know what the call is. We're like, she got the call, he got the call. And we know that Beyonce got the call first. But you really could sense all throughout this election cycle, Beyonce just didn't want to get involved. Because when she wants to get involved, she does the absolute most. She did the absolute most back in 2016 when Hillary Clinton was running against Trump.
Next president of the United States is Hillary Clinton.
When I say that this year it was not the same energy, that's what I'm referring to. I feel like instead what maybe happened this year with Beyonce was someone phoned her up. Eventually he's just like, look, we got Jay-Z on tapes. It's slippery. It's like a slip and slide. It's got baby oil. Get your butt out there and say something nice about Kamala Harris.
We are so happy to be standing here on this stage as proud country Texas women.
She is doing an obligation. You can feel it.
Freedom must surely mean that women themselves get to make these profoundly intimate decisions, not politicians. And that's why, if Congress passes a bill to restore the reproductive freedom that women had for nearly 50 years and that Donald Trump bragged about taking away, Kamala Harris will sign it into law.
This is shocking.
To exterminate the Negro population, Margaret Sanger, founder of Planned Parenthood, Hillary Clinton did say, I admire Margaret Sanger enormously. No politician would get my vote nor my support if they would have said, I admire Margaret Sanger, the woman who said, our goal is the extermination of the Negro race. What kind of Negro would vote for a woman who would say such a thing? Got to be a dumb Negro to do that. Something wrong with you, Negro.
Housing, crime, a lost pet. If you just let him round up whoever he wants, ship him out, all your problems will be solved. America will be great again. So let's talk about immigration for a second. A lot of folks have legitimate concerns about what's happening at our borders. It is critical that the next president work with Democrats and Republicans to make sure our borders are orderly and secure. We are a nation of immigrants. We are also a nation of laws. And we have to make sure that those two things work together. But, you know, whenever the issue of immigration comes up, Donald Trump likes to say it's Kamala Harris's fault. She's been vice president for 4 years. Why didn't she fix it? Wasn't Donald Trump president for 4 years? Why didn't he fix it? If rounding up and deporting millions of desperate people is the answer to everything, why was the number of undocumented immigrants basically the same when Donald Trump left office as when he took office? Think about that. I'll tell you why. Because Donald Trump doesn't have a real plan to solve immigration. He's got a concept of a plan, and it's a mean and ugly concept. You know what would actually bring order to the border and fix our immigration system? The bipartisan deal that Kamala Harris supported, even though it was written by one of the most conservative Republicans in Congress. Donald Trump, on the verge of the vote, told Republicans not to vote for it because his mindset was, I want this issue to run on. I want to be able to fearmonger. That's how I'm going to win this election. That's how he was thinking. We do not need a president, Wisconsin, who will make problems worse just to make their politics better. We need a president who cares about solving problems and making your life better. And that's what Kamala Harris will do. And to help her do it, she's going to need a Senate full of public servants like Tammy Baldwin. Tammy spent her career fighting for things like good jobs and affordable health care and medication and personal freedom. She knows how to make a difference. She has proved she can make a difference. Remember how the Affordable Care Act lets young people stay on their parents' health care plan until they're 26? Tammy wrote that part of the bill. She knew it was important to Wisconsin families. That's the kind of workhorse and not show horse that we need in Washington. That's the kind of person who's going to help get Kamala in office and help Kamala get stuff done. Somebody who shares our values. Somebody who wants to move this country forward and not back. Yeah, she's really good.
So what's on your mind?
Oh, Madam VP Harris, I'm worried about the election. Women's reproductive rights are on the line. Our Supreme Court is on the line. Our basic freedoms are being tested, Madam VP. I know you've been traveling across the country. What are you hearing?
Yeah, girl, I'm out here in these streets. And let me tell you, you're right, Taraji. There is so much at stake in this moment. The majority of us believe in freedom and equality. But these extremists, as they say, they're not like us.
They not.
There's a full-on attack on our fundamental freedoms. The freedom to vote.
Yep.
The freedom to love who you love. The freedom to be safe from gun violence. The freedom for a woman to make decisions about her own body, not having her government tell her what to do.
They out here trying to take away Pride, Plan B, and Planned Parenthood, but protecting pistols. If you ask me, they pushing the wrong P's.
You don't speak like that. Shut up.
I don't know. Maybe some people respond well to the obvious code switching and pandering.
Yeah,
right?
No, that was vomitous.
Out here in these streets and they not like us.
Isn't she Ivy League educated? She's a vice president.
But she's out here in these streets, okay?
Yeah, what streets? You were in a very plush studio. What streets are you out in? Okay, and have you ever seen Kamala Harris in the streets? Have you seen her in any? I haven't seen her in any streets. What are you talking about? They not like us. Is that how you speak when you're at a debate? Is that how you speak when you're in front of a convention?
Good morning, AIPAC. Good morning. What an honor. No, we must stand with Israel. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit black people. No. Which is why I support the United States' commitment to provide Israel with $38 billion in military assistance over the next decade. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit black people. No. I support full funding for Israel, including for the Arrow, David Sling, and the Iron Dome missile defense systems, which save lives. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit black people. No. And that's why I am fully committing to maintaining Israel's qualitative military edge. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit black people. No. I stand here clear-eyed about the dangers of division in our country and in our world, understanding why a state for the Jewish people is so essential.
Do you support reparations for black people?
No. So what's on your mind?
When I was president, I did not solve all the problems of our healthcare system. But just this week, while I was visiting a campaign volunteer office in Maryland, 3 people separately, unprompted, came up and told me how the ACA had protected their families during a serious illness. One woman comes up and she says, "You saved my son's life." Now, I promise you, every single one of you here, somebody you know has health care because of the Affordable Care Act. And it It did not solve every problem, but it's made a difference. It's provided people with some security, and I could not have done that without your vote. Now, I will give you the opposite example. When I was president, we had to deal with Ebola and H1N virus, and so I started really studying issues of pandemic, and I called my team together in my second term, and I said, we need to put together a playbook for how to deal with pandemic, the same way we have a playbook for how to deal with natural disasters, hurricanes, floods, etc. What are we going to do? And so we put together the playbook, we called together all the agencies, sat them down, we ran what are called tabletop exercises to practice how are we going to deal with the state public health systems, what are we going to do with the schools, what kinds of travel restrictions might be put in place, how do we accelerate vaccines, had it all in this big book. And so when Donald Trump comes in, I hand it to him. Where's the book? I handed it to him, and apparently it was lost. And 3 years later, a pandemic hits. Now, I want to be fair on this. No matter who was president, the pandemic was going to be a terrible crisis. People were going to get sick. People were going to die. But if you look at a country like Canada, their per capita death rate, think about this, their per capita death rate was 60% lower than in the United States. Over 1 million people died during the pandemic here in the US, so do the math. 60% of 1 million people is 600,000 people. That's somebody's grandparent. That's somebody's parent. That's somebody's husband or wife. That's somebody's coworker, somebody's friend that might be alive if we had had a competent president who was focused on dealing with the crisis instead of wondering whether we could treat COVID by injecting bleach into our arms. So if somebody tells you this election does not matter, tell them respectfully that having a president who understands policy and is willing to put in the work does matter. And for those of you who, even after they hear that, are still undecided, let me tell you what else matters. Values matter. Character matters. A president makes 1 million decisions. And most of the time, they're judgment calls. The easy decisions, the obvious decisions get made by somebody else. The hard ones are what gets to the president's desk. And you can't anticipate every issue that's going to come down the pipe. And so it's really important. Does that person have a moral compass? Do they have some integrity? Are they focused on doing what's right by the American people? Values matter. Some of you know that when I was growing up, I didn't have a father in the house, but I did have people around me. Stepfather, grandparents, teachers, coaches, most of all my mom, who taught me the difference between right and wrong. Who showed me what it meant to have integrity, to be honest, to be responsible, to work hard, to treat other people the way I wanted to be treated. Now, there were times where I did not perfectly live up to those values, especially when I was a teenager. But as I got older, I internalized those values. I tried to live up to them. Not perfectly, but I knew they were important, and I wanted to be that person. And I suspect most of you grew up the same way. And one of the most disturbing things about this election, not just this election, but Trump's entire rise in politics, you can see it just pervading our political culture is how we seem to have just set aside those values that we were taught.
No, Kamala Harris, oh, she's running for the vice presidency. I call her Miss Lock Up a Brother, for when she was the AG in California, a Negro knew, a black man knew that he was dead in the water. He was dead in the water. Matter of fact, you don't need a trial. You might as well go to jail if you appear before her, because she took pride in locking up black folk. And now all of a sudden she's trying to be sister girl. I'm telling it. Check out her record. She locked us up left and right. Yes, she did. Yes, she did. Yes, she did. Yes, you did, Kamala, however I should pronounce it, you did. And now we're supposed to forget all that stuff. And she boasted in California that she was one of the first. I got the tape cued, but my time's up to date. One of the first I showed you Thursday night to perform a same-sex marriage. Y'all want to see it? You want to see it? Let it rip.
Let the rings exchanged and the vows declared symbolize your commitment, sincerity, and affection.
Yeah.
And may your love never falter.
May your love never falter.
By virtue of the power and authority vested in me by the state of California, I now declare you.
Oh, Kamala Harris. Oh.
When he calls service members who died in battle losers, or fellow citizens vermin, so many of his supporters are willing to excuse it, or justify it, or overlook it. You know, it's been 20 years since I first appeared before a national audience at the Democratic Convention in Boston. And in that speech, I insisted there are no red states or blue states, no black America or white America, or gay or straight America. There was just the United States of America. And some people at the time, and certainly in subsequent years, thought, that's naive, given how divided the country seemed at the time. But you know what? It was based on my experience. Because traveling across Illinois and later traveling across places like Wisconsin and Michigan and the rest of the country, I had witnessed time and again the goodness and the neighborliness, the shared values and the integrity that bound people together. I had seen people who had opposed the Iraq War stand up and salute a vet, or volunteer to help wounded warriors. I had seen conservative Republicans provide shelter and support for young immigrants and help homeless folks in their communities. It didn't matter what part of the country it was, what race or faith people were from. I saw people live up to that golden rule. And a lot has changed since then. I've gotten grayer, obviously. Our politics has gotten a lot more toxic. Social media is full of conspiracy theories and outright lies. Some of it, by the way, produced by the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians. And all those messages fed into our phones and into our brains isolate us and divide us, encourage us to mistrust each other, and even hate each other.
So hold up, we gonna blame that on the Russians? Yo, Obama, we gonna blame that on the Russians. We not gonna blame that on the same reason why you want us to vote for Kamala Harris, bro. We not gonna blame that on our mother, because that is our first oppressor. That is the person, that's our first relationship, the relationship we have with our parents. That's where we learn all these mingy and meisty ways, because God ain't just drop us here with those ways in us. That's learned behavior. So we're going to blame that. We're going to blame that hatred that we have for one another over here on this land on the Russians. Yo, Obama, stop playing with me, yo.
There's people walking around out here that are soulless avatars simply operating on matrix programming. They're living, but they're not alive. And they're all around us. They're all over the place. People that have never woken up to who they truly actually are. They simply are operating on the code that they've been programmed and given since they were born, since they were even in the womb and at gestation. The same code, just running on programming, never exceeding the programming, never reprogramming the programming, never editing it, never hacking themselves, just running on the pure code and living a complete lie, believing that they're alive, but they're not.
You can still get it done before the game. I won't be offended if you leave right now. If you have an absentee ballot, do not put it in the mail at this point. Bring it to a drop box at any early voting site. And if you can't vote early, make a plan to vote on Election Day, November 5th. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Just go to let me make sure I get this right, wisdems.org/vote. And that'll tell you where you can go. And remember to bring your photo ID. And then get your friends and your family to make a plan to vote too, because together, in 3 days, we have a chance to choose a new generation of leadership in this country and start building a better and stronger and more hopeful America. Now, I don't think it's any news to you that this election is going to be tight. It's going to be tight because a lot of Americans are still struggling. You know, as a country, sometimes I think we forget we have been through a lot over these last few years. We had a historic pandemic that wreaked havoc on communities and businesses and families. The disruptions from the pandemic caused price hikes that put a strain on family budgets. And even before the pandemic, a lot of Americans felt that no matter how hard they worked, treading water was the best they could do. So I understand why people are looking to shake things up. What I cannot understand is why anybody would think Donald Trump will shake things up in a way that is good for you. Because there is absolutely no evidence that this man thinks about anybody but himself. This is a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems since he rode down that golden escalator 9 years ago. And we've seen it for over a decade now, this show of his. The late night tweets, all caps. The weird tangents and crazy conspiracy theories. The constant attempts to sell you stuff. Gold sneakers, a $100,000 watch, even a Trump Bible.
Our clients often complain about
the call. You guys know what the call is. We all know what the call is. We're like, she got the call, he got the call. And we know that Beyonce got the call first. But you really could sense all throughout this election cycle, Beyonce just didn't want to get involved. Because when she wants to get involved, she does the absolute most. She did the absolute most back in 2016 when Hillary Clinton was running against Trump.
Next president of the United States is Hillary Clinton.
So when I say that this year it was not the same energy, that's what I'm referring to. I feel like instead what maybe happened this year with Beyonce was someone phoned her up. Eventually he's just like, look, we got Jay-Z on tapes. It's slippery. It's like a slip and slide. It's got baby oil. Get your butt out there and say something nice about Kamala Harris.
We are so happy to be standing here on this stage as proud country, Texas women.
She is doing an obligation. You can feel it.
It won't make a difference in his life. But most of all, Donald Trump wants us to think that this country is hopelessly divided between us and them, between real Americans, quote unquote, who support him, of course, and outsiders who don't. Because he thinks that having America divided, having people angry and resentful, will increase his chances to get elected. It's as simple as that. And I'm here to tell you, Milwaukee, we do not need another 4 years of Trump's arrogance and incompetence and division. America's better than that. America's ready to turn the page. America's ready for a new story, a better story. We are ready for a president, Kamala Harris. And the good news is Kamala Harris is ready for the job.
All right, guys, make sure y'all get out there and vote Tuesday. Get there, get there. I ain't here to tell you who to vote for, but make sure whoever you vote for can help you out. Hopefully you building on something and you're not sitting around here waiting for somebody to give you anything, because neither one of them, whoever you vote for, they ain't giving you nothing. Understand that, guys. Enjoy your night, y'all. Peace.
Just the average tough for to be a black man when a man's pride is taking care of his family, providing food for the table, providing a great environment, a nice place to live, and suddenly someone says, you can't do that anymore. That's heartbreaking. It's very tough for a black man to become successful in a country that didn't give him the proper tools of education to deal with once he left that school place. It is very tough. Where we are headed, only God knows where we're headed. I don't have a crystal ball, Jay. I can tell you this. I hope that black men all over America realizes that the game outside is tough. It is very, very cold. It is very hard, but that game is not impossible. To win, you must get committed. It's tough to say that to a person that don't know how to weld or to build or to do carpentry. Just the average person who dropped out of school and now discovers at 28, 29, I messed up. It's never too late to learn.
Somebody out like they better off without you, man. Let them go. Especially when you know you pressure. It's either gonna make a diamond or it's gonna bust a pipe. And a lot of times, man, that pressure be busting a pipe, man. You be too much pressure and people don't even know what to do with you. That's what it really be, man. People don't know what to do with you. You be too much for them. So what they gonna do? They gonna go get something basic. They gonna level down. They supposed to be trying to level up, but they go level down. They don't know how to take you. They don't know how to handle you. They don't know what to do with you. They don't know how to love you. They don't know how to build with you. They don't know how to get money with you. They don't know how to understand you. You too much pressure. They be knowing they be in over their head, man. You pressure, man. Remember that. Don't ever feel like you gotta kill your flames for somebody else to shine or to be with somebody else, man. If you gotta dim your light for somebody else, man, you don't even need them around you anyway. You feel me? Cause don't forget, man, this the same world that'll tear you down. This the same world that'll kick you while you down, man. You better feel like you pressure. It ain't about feeling like your